It's that time of the year in the college football public where we start to rank things, right? Because we're past spring football. Fall camp is a little bit too far off for us to start unpacking that. So right now, we start to give you our tiers for different things across the college football world. Today, we're not just giving you our current rankings. We're going to go ahead and give you the future rankings for the top quarterbacks in the sport, as well as a ton of other things that I'll talk about here in just a second. Welcome into the Hard Count. You're home, all right? Deep breath in, deep breath out, exhale. You made it to the show. It's college football. It's nothing but college football for the next hour or so. So kick them up, relax, and enjoy this thing. Make sure you're subscribed. Podcast, YouTube, we're on Spotify and Apple if you get your podcast that way. Bottom line, however you consume this show, just make sure you have subscribed so you don't miss any shows in the future, because we can't have that as we move forward towards the fall and into this magical time of the college football season right before fall camp, because a lot of people now, a lot of folks start to leave the sport right about now. They think they've got a gauge on the transfer portal. They think they've got a good understanding as to where things sit currently. And they're going to come back to this sport right before week one, and they'll be like, wait, how come that guy's starting? How come this guy's on that team? I'm telling you, this thing moves pretty quick. To quote Ferris Bueller, if you don't stop and look around once in a while, if you don't watch the Hard Count once in a while or every single Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, you might miss something. So we're glad to have you all a part of this. It is Tuesday, May 14th, 2024, the last one on the face of the planet. Got a lot to get to. Like I said, our top 10 quarterbacks in the sport. This is not a current rankings. There are quarterbacks on this list, I promise you, that are going to be first-year starters that I think by the end of the season will be top 10 in the sport. Cormani McClain, still on the board in the transfer portal, a 5-star corner. Where's he headed? Steve Wiltfong and Pete Nakos put in a pick for Cormani to end up at Florida. What do we think of that? Is that a good fit? A little bit of a head-scratcher in some ways. We'll have Pete Nakos actually on the show as well to unpack the Cormani prediction, as well as a number of other notes across the transfer portal. We'll give you our thoughts independently when it comes to Cormani McClain and Florida. Also, I've noticed this over the course of, I guess, the last few months, really since the season ended. A lot of Shane Beamer slander out there. A lot of people with some thoughts and opinions that I think are a little bit negative in nature around the head ball coach out there in South Carolina. Are those fair? We'll unpack that criticism together. And then also, since we were last on the air together, that Deluxe Edition cover for College Football 25 from EA Sports, that dropped. Some more news, it sounds like, coming 2 days from right now, actually. I would think that countdown's at 2 days and probably maybe less than 2 days right now. Bottom line, more news coming, but we'll unpack that cover together. Like I said, we're very glad to have y'all here. Don't miss anything on this show or on my social channels, at JD Piquel. If you've been following me on Instagram, then you saw we had a sweet gift from the good folks at Oregon Football. They dropped us some equipment. Unpack that together. Got another one of those on my Instagram coming. So make sure you follow me there at JD Piquel, Twitter, Instagram, or X, whatever you want to call it. Follow me on those platforms, and we will keep a good thing going as we move forward together. All right, let's jump right into it, man. Portal Pete coming up in right around 13 or so minutes. Before we get to that, though, who are going to be the top 10 quarterbacks in college football? Notice I did not say who are currently the top 10 quarterbacks in college football. I'm talking when we get to conference championship weekend and we take a look back at the season that was, who are the top 10 signal callers in the sport? Full disclaimer, this is not a current ranking, as I just mentioned a second ago, and also this was a hard list to put together. So I think the way that we put this together was we tried to evaluate, one, what the quarterback's going to do statistically. It's a massive part, obviously, of what the sport of college football is what do you do on the actual field. Also, though, we have to remember, not all systems are created equally. Like the system at Alabama is very different than the system at Iowa. They're going to ask those quarterbacks to do different things. So we tried to grade that on a curve as best we can. Before I get to the number 10, I want to unpack an honorable mention with you. Cam Rising from Utah. You could probably sell me on him being a top 10 quarterback in the sport. The reason why I don't have him on this list is for the sheer fact that he's coming off an injury, and I just don't know what he's going to be just yet. Avery Johnson, I think he also could be a top 10 quarterback on this list at the end of the season. The true freshman, or not true freshman, I guess it was a true freshman last year. The true sophomore, if you will, from Kansas State. He's going to be a stud. He's going to tear it up. Is he going to be top 10? A little bit rich for me with him being a true freshman, but with that being said, we'll see where we are at the end of this thing. So with that being said, let's jump right into it, man. Our top 10 quarterbacks for the class, or the season rather, not the class, the season that is 2024. At number 10, I got Garrett Nussmeier. Now, Garrett Nussmeier, it'll be his first year starting in Baton Rouge, all right? I think it's important for us to notice that he stayed at LSU after last season, or 2 seasons ago, rather. Him staying at LSU when he really, to be real, could have started a lot of other places across the country last season. He chose to stay at LSU, chose to sit, should tell you a lot about how this staff feels about him internally in Baton Rouge. The weapons for him are there. I mean, Kyron Lacey, C.J. Daniels, a transfer from Liberty, who's a very quiet, big-time acquisition for them via the portal, and the system they're going to run this upcoming season under Joe Sloan. I understand now. Mike Denbrock, the OC from last year that Jaden Daniels played under, gone to Notre Dame. Joe Sloan, I think, is going to run a very similar kind of system. They're going to score a lot of points, and I think Garrett Nussmeier, and the fact that he's had some time now to sit behind the Jaden Daniels, to get comfortable in a college system. When he was earlier on in his career in Baton Rouge, he was a little bit more of a gunslinger. The knock on him was, yeah, he likes to push the ball downfield, but we don't know where it's going all the time. It might be going to the other team. More of a refined gunslinger. The fact that he's gotten multiple reps throughout his entire college career now behind closed doors is going to serve him well. It is his team now. He knows that. Brian Kelly knows that. Everyone in that locker room knows that. And I think you kind of got a preview of it during the bowl game. We try our best not to fall victim to bowl syndrome and take too much from one final game. But still, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, and 395 yards. Garrett Nussmeier, I believe, will be a top 10 quarterback in college football when it's all said and done this upcoming season. At number 9, I got Will Howard from Ohio State. And Will Howard, quite frankly, could end up being a lot higher on this list. The thing that I love about him, man, he has the experience and he has the weapons in place to do some really exciting things in Columbus, Ohio this year. He has 67 career touchdowns, played a lot of college football, has played in 34 games throughout his career, meaning there's not going to be a moment that is too big for Will Howard. You play quarterback at Ohio State now. The pressure is enormous to begin with, but you pair the moments he's going to have this upcoming season where he better have a cool hand. That game October 12th, where you go to Eugene, Oregon, you go to Autzen, play the Ducks at their place. There better not be any shaking that hand for Will Howard when he lines up. I don't think there will be by nature of how much college football he's played. The backfield they have in Columbus is stacked. They are going to support him. They are going to force defenses to keep an honest box. Travion Henderson, Quinshaw Judkins, I think that's the best backfield in America. Chip Kelly and the system that he runs, going to be a little bit of a marriage between his approach offensively and Ryan Day's approach offensively. The bottom line here is he's going to have a really good play caller for him in Chip Kelly that's going to play to his skill set. And oh, by the way, you have yet again another stacked wide receiver room. Emeka Egbuka, Jeremiah Smith. He's going to be in good shape. How quickly he gets comfortable in this system, and I'm talking about not just being able to drive the car and know all the right checks and know where to go with the football. I'm talking about, can you whip this Ferrari? Can you take this thing around the corner at 90 miles an hour and know everything inside and out and be comfortable inside and out? That's going to dictate how high he climbs on this list when we get to the end of the season. But for me, I think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. I have him at number 9 on our list this season. Number 8, the only true freshman on this list, Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava. That's a name now that a lot of folks are going to be familiar with to start this season, because I'm telling you, a lot of broadcasters behind closed doors right now, they're practicing that name because they know they're going to have to say it a lot. He has so much ability and so many weapons around him. He may have the highest ceiling of anyone on this list. He was the number 1 player for us in 2023, not just the number 1 quarterback, the number 1 player in the class of 2023. And the system is built for him, quite frankly, to go absolutely nuts. I draw this comparison a lot. He's a different player than Hendon Hooker, but think about how that offense was humming in 2022. Hendon Hooker's just dropping dimes all over the place. Jalen Hyatt's winning his matchup, and that's the big factor here for me with Nico. I think he has all the tools in the world to be successful. Large frame, the ball pops out of his hand, has an absolute whip for an arm. It's all about how comfortable he gets that first month of the season. Some big games now. NC State in Charlotte, you're at Oklahoma. But if he can get comfortable within this scheme and the weapons on the perimeter for him can do their job and win their matchups, he's going to put up massive numbers, and they're going to score a whole lot of points. And Tennessee's probably in that conversation for being one of the Tier 1 teams in the SEC and maybe having their chance at a college football playoff berth. A lot of this bet with Nico being in the top 10 for us, in the top quarterbacks at the end of the season, I believe is based on his ability and based on his just potential. He's got too much potential, too high of a ceiling to leave off this list for me. I've got him as a top 10 quarterback in the sport at the end of this season. At number 7, another new face at a new place, but a familiar face, Cam Ward from Miami. He threw for over 3,700 yards last year at Washington State, 25 touchdowns, 7 picks, ran for 8 more, really efficient through the air, 66% completion percentage. He is the kind of quarterback that is going to thrive in a Shannon Dawson system. They want to throw the ball horizontal to start, so you got to be efficient, you got to get the ball out on time, and then they want to make you pay deep. He wasn't consistent enough last year with Tyler Van Dyke to be able to make this offense thrive. Cam Ward is going to be more consistent. Cam Ward is going to be more of a known commodity within that system throughout the course of this season, meaning it's not going to be a lot of hoping and wishing that he can make all the throws. He's going to make all the throws for you. It's a matter of how quickly he gets comfortable and how much they're able to help him on the perimeter, much like I just said with Nico Iamaleava. I will say this, though. All the buzz you've heard around Cam Ward this offseason, 1, it's real, and 2, it's not strictly coming from within Coral Gables. Like sometimes you hear guys like going by campus and talking to coaches and saying, oh, yeah, this guy's slinging it. It's probably true. There's no reason for those coaches to lie to those people. But even from people that have no stake in the game, even people that aren't totally dialed in or inside that building in Coral Gables that just go by a practice or just go check out Miami, during the spring and went and saw the spring game, like it's all adding up. Like the buzz is real. Trust the buzz around Cam Ward. They can win the ACC with him playing quarterback. I don't think you felt that way last year with Tyler Van Dyke if you're moving into this season with him still playing quarterback. Not dunking on Tyler Van Dyke. I just think you look at what Cam Ward brings to the table. He has all you need. He's going to fit that system really effectively, and I can't wait to see it. At number 6, this is one that I think we're going to have a little bit lower on our list than some other folks, but nonetheless, we'll roll with it. At number 6, I got Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. Now, the kid can flat out ball. He's going to put up huge numbers. He put up big numbers last year, over 3,200 yards, 27 touchdowns, 3 picks. They are going to throw it to win. So regardless of what Colorado does this year on the win-loss columns, he's going to have big stats. He's got weapons to throw to. Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn, Omarion Miller. They got guys to get the football to that can make him right, especially when he puts the ball in the right place. He's getting a lot of first-round buzz for a reason. Okay, it's not just like his last name is Sanders, and that's why he's being talked about as a first-round pick. Like, dude can really spin it. The reason why I don't have him higher on this list, I'm not sure how much help he's going to get up front. And I know they've done a lot through the portal to put a better offensive line in front of him, but I need to see it to believe it. Because if Shedeur Sanders is the only answer for you offensively at Colorado, he'll put up big numbers, but how much is he going to really thrive remains to be seen. So if they can be a little bit more balanced and get a better push up front, I'd be more excited about him long-term this season. But regardless, I think either way you slice it, he's got the ability to be a top 10 quarterback in the sport this season, and I think he will be exactly that. So Shedeur Sanders for us at number 6. Now, if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the channel before we get into the top 5. Please and thank you. Here's the college football hill that I'm willing to die on. Jalen Milroe is going to be a top 5 quarterback in the sport this season. Jalen Milroe and Kalen DeBoer, to me, are a lot like the French fry and milkshake combo. Like you hear about people taking French fries and dipping it in their milkshake, and it just sounds like it wouldn't work. Sounds like it wouldn't taste good. 2 things that are very different. I think that's Kalen DeBoer and Jalen Milroe. You don't think they're supposed to go together, and then you try it, and you're like, oh, wow, this is phenomenal. Jalen Milroe isn't necessarily the prototypical quarterback that Kalen DeBoer's worked with. Jake Haener, Michael Penix Jr., very different skill sets than what Jalen Milroe brings to the table. But Kalen DeBoer, I believe, is going to play to his skill set and put him in position to thrive. Because you think about Jalen Milroe and what he wasn't able to be successful at last year was consistency. Threw the deep ball extremely well. Averaged 10 yards an attempt. But they didn't necessarily have it totally dialed in the intermediate game. And that caused the offense to have some hiccups. Kalen DeBoer is going to do a lot for Jalen Milroe pre-snap with shifts and motions and play design to give him answers pre-snap. So, like, he already knows where he's going with the football. Or he already knows 1 to 2 where he's going. And if not, he's going to go be special and get out and make some plays with his legs. It's not quite that simple, but that's the overarching thought for me, is they're going to allow him to have more answers pre-snap, be able to digest the defense more effectively, And then in addition to that, the spacing of this offense is going to create a really thin defense, is what I like to say, meaning you don't have a lot of guys that are able to have help behind them, whether it's in the pass game or in the run game. And if you make a thin defense, thin things, they get punched through pretty effectively. It's going to create for a lot of lanes for Jalen Milroe to gash them with his legs. He's going to put up big numbers. Last year, he threw for 2,800 yards, 23 touchdowns, ran for 12 more. He's going to, I believe, throw for closer to 28 touchdowns, and I think he'll be double-digit touchdowns rushing as well. The big thing for me is I think his yards passing this year will be exponentially higher because of how much help Kalen DeBoer is going to give him within this scheme. Going to play to his skill set, allow him to be special running the football as well. He's going to be a top 5 quarterback in the sport. I have no problem dying on that hill and saying that. At number 4, we have Oregon's Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel, of course, has played 300 years of college football, and we love him for it. You wear that helmet as long as they allow you to. Until they take the pads off you and put you in a cubicle, you play college football. Dillon Gabriel probably has aspirations to play past college football, so the cubicle talk can wait. He may have the highest floor of this entire group. The scheme that Oregon is going to allow him to thrive in plays exactly to his skill set. It's a big reason why he chose Oregon. Dillon Gabriel is going to get the football out quickly. He's going to put it in the right place on his receiver. He's going to be accurate with the football. Okay, so bottom line, Dillon Gabriel is going to be a great distributor. He's going to make good decisions. When that happens within this offense, Bo Nix is a tremendous example of this. You do those two things, you score a lot of points, you put up big numbers as a quarterback. There's a reason Bo Nix threw the ball for a 77% completion percentage last year. I don't know that you're going to have Dillon Gabriel do the exact same numbers of that, but I think it's fair to expect him to be within the realm of a 70% completion percentage. The extra level with him is he also has some RPO experience. He also has a lot of experience playing college football, period. Those things are going to marry really well together in my mind because it's going to allow him to play within the scheme and be able to play fast within the scheme. Like if you are a younger quarterback, yes, you maybe have some RPO experience. Yes, you probably know where to go with the football, but it's very different to know what's happening during a walkthrough or know what's happening when you're drawing it up on the board, and then to actually be in the trenches with your guys, have live bullets flying, and then be able to have the presence of mind, not get rattled, pull the ball out when you see that linebacker come down, hit the slant, and off we go. It's also worth noting a big reason why Dillon Gabriel is going to put up big numbers in 2024 is because they got a lot of weapons for him in this offense at Oregon. Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, Jordan James is going to be a great back for him. Jay Harris, we could keep going down the list here, but at the end of the day, Dillon Gabriel is going to be phenomenal. I have zero reservations about saying that. I think he has the highest statistical floor, at least, of this group within our top 10. Now, at number 3, this is someone we have been very high on this show for a long time, and that is Ole Miss's Jackson Dart. This prediction, for me saying he's going to be a top 3 quarterback in college football this year, is largely based on him being able to take another step within this scheme. Because he gets to Ole Miss from USC, never played in an RPO system. It was brand new to him. So he was trying to figure it out on the fly. He's the guy at Ole Miss from the jump, and he was clearly not comfortable. Accounted for 21 total touchdowns, had 11 picks, and then in 2023 takes a massive jump. Accounts for 10 more touchdowns, cuts his interception number in half, and if he takes another step in the Charlie Weiss system in year 3, is he in the Heisman conversation? Because at that point, he's probably in the range of 40-ish total touchdowns. Ole Miss is probably in the college football playoff discussion, if not already locked up a spot. He's got more weapons, adding Juice Wells to that mix. You bring Trey Harris back. I think Jackson Dart's about to thrive. The schedule in itself, too, we don't talk about schedules much for most of these guys, but it's worth discussing for Jackson Dart. No Texas, no Bama. Their toughest game is Georgia. They get them at home. I like the way this shapes up for Jackson Dart. He will be a top 10 quarterback in college football at the end of the season. At number 2, I got Quinn Ewers. And just to kind of reset our conversation here, we're really splitting hairs between who's at number 2 and at number 1 on this list. I have Quinn Ewers at 2. He may have the best numbers out of anybody on this list when it comes to the end of this season. Dillon Gabriel probably has the highest floor, but Quinn Ewers, I think, has the ability to have the best statistical performance out of anybody on this list this season. Because last year, there was sort of this feeling, if you're Quinn Ewers, that he had arrived at Texas. Like he had arrived in the college football sphere, and that was after there was all this pressure on him being such a highly touted recruit and him going to Ohio State for the NIL, NIL opportunity, because he couldn't be, he couldn't make couldn't make NIL. Let's reset this. He couldn't make NIL money as a senior in high school. So he leaves high school early, goes to Ohio State, very widely public, ends up not being a fit there, goes to Texas, a lot of pressure on him, has a okay first year, gets hurt, pops in his second year at Texas. Now he's coming back. Still didn't play a full season last year, but I think he has figured out what works in college football. Like the light bulb is on and it's flashing, it's beaming. There's a high watt light bulb right now over Quinn Ewers. His third year in Steve Sarkisian's system is going to be incredible for him. I know they lose Xavier Worthy, they lose Adonai Mitchell, but you bring in Silas Bolden, you bring in who else do they bring in? You bring in Matthew Golden. Like they've got a lot of Isaiah Bond. They got a lot of weapons for them to be able to rock and roll. So he's going to put up big numbers. I could definitely see a reality where if his weapons are able to hit the ground running and are able to translate to this offense quickly, he could be number one on this list. Now at number one on this list, I got Carson Beck. And the reason why I have Carson Beck at number one, even though he may not put up the biggest numbers in college football, I have the highest level of confidence that he is going to execute his job at the highest level every single Saturday. Now, again, what's asked of him at Georgia is very different than what's going to be asked of Quinn Ewers at Texas. But you watch Carson Beck out there every single Saturday, it's not hard to tell. My guy's a surgeon. Okay, he was still figuring it out a little bit last year. He figured it out to the tune of 72% completing his passes. That's ridiculous. Like, that's just silly. He has a lot of weapons around him. They lose Brock Bowers. They lose Ladd McConkey. But even so, man, Dominique Lovett, Colby Young, Dylan Bell, all of those pieces are going to allow him to spray the ball around the yard. And last year, we talked about it a little bit. Kirby Smart talked about it as well. There was a lot of letting Carson Beck get comfortable last year. There was a lot of continuing to provide him more and more leash within this offense. Now that car's not rented anymore. That is the Georgia offense. That is his car. That is his offense. He is going to drive it. He is going to whip it, and it's going to be a good deal for the folks in Athens. So for me, Carson Beck will be the top quarterback in college football at the end of this season. So to recap it for you, at number 10, I got Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. At number 9, I got Will Howard. At number 8, I got Nico Iamaleava. At number 7, Miami's Cam Ward. At number 6, Shedeur Sanders. He can be a lot higher on this list if he gets some protection from his offensive line. Number 5, I got Jalen Milroe. I think he's going to do phenomenal in Kalen DeBoer's system. At number 4, we got Dylan Gabriel, potentially the highest floor option on this entire list. Jackson Dart at number 3. He's going to do numbers like Goodwill Hunting, his third year in that system. At number 2, Quinn Ewers, potentially going to have the best statistical season out of anybody on this list. And at number 1, the surgeon, Carson Beck from Georgia. So that is not our current rankings. That is a prediction when we get to the end of college football season. Let me know your list on Twitter and on Instagram at JD Piquel. Also, let me know in the comment section below who you got as your top 10 at the end of college football season at the quarterback position. All right, make sure you're subscribed as we keep a good thing going now. The transfer portal is starting to kind of shut down. It's kind of starting to come to a close. But with that being said, there's still some big names on the board. And I got Portal Pete Nakos saying, you know what, I didn't hear no bell. Clock doesn't say triple zeros to me just yet. So we're going to bring on Pete Nakos right now to unpack this together. Pete, you're running on caffeine. You're running on fumes. You are going the extra mile. A lot of people behind you gave up a long time ago. You're still pushing. Welcome to the Hard Count, man. How are we doing?
I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal, man. I'm doing phenomenal. You put out an intel piece not too long ago. You put out a pick recently, so let's jump right into that, man. Cormani McClain. It seemed like there was not a ton of buzz around his recruitment, or maybe he was just playing it close to the vest. And then you pop, I believe it was over the last 48 hours, you and Steve Wiltfong both put in a prediction for him to end up at Florida. Is this something that it's just kind of like right fit for Florida? They have a need in the secondary, or what's going into this with making you put in that prediction?
So there's a need In the secondary for another defensive back, and obviously Cormani McClain would fill that the role. Cormani was also in Gainesville on Friday. Spent the day with Billy Napier. And then Cormani's mother and agent were also in that conversation. And then over the weekend was told he's expected back to be in Gainesville, and that will be today. Actually, he's back at Florida today to get around the players. And yeah, Steve Wilfong and I logged picks on yesterday for him to become a Gator, and I think some things still need to be sorted out, but everything is definitely trending in that direction.
So I think from the outside looking in, it felt like you were hearing a lot of the G5 schools, like USF is in the mix, and then you also heard from some other maybe lower profile power conference schools. I know Utah was a talking point at one point in time. Was he just really playing it this close to the vest, or was there not as many suitors for Cormani McClain?
I think he played it really close to the vest. I also think Florida has really emerged in the last week, from my understanding. I don't believe that this has been a team that has been in the mix since he immediately entered the portal. But where things stand right now, really where Florida sits, and I think today getting back on campus is going to be kind of being around the program a little bit, interacting with some players, but. I mean, as you know, JD, Florida is pretty high up there in his recruitment. I think he already knows quite a few guys on the roster. It really adds up. It gets him closer to home, and I think he likes how he could fit into that defense.
It's fascinating because his recruitment at the high school level kind of taught us to expect the unexpected with him. There was a thought it was going to be Florida before he committed to Miami. Signing day comes and goes. He ends up flipping to Colorado, goes to Colorado, and now it seems like Florida is back squarely in the driver's seat. Is there any other school that's like, hey, it's Florida, your pick is in for Florida, you're not wavering on that? Any other school that maybe is in the rearview mirror that fans should keep an eye on for Cormani McClain, or at least in the discussion, or is it really just Florida in this mix right now for him?
I only got one school right now, JD, and that's Florida. And if things for some reason don't go well today, then I guess we'll come up for air. But everything I've heard is all eyes are on his visit today in Gainesville.
Good stuff. Awesome. Well, Pete, like you mentioned, not just Cormani McClain in the mix right now. I say you mentioned because you had that intel piece out there. Is there anything else on Tyler Barron right now? Because he was a guy who at one point in time was committed to Ole Miss. Then he transfers to Louisville, and now he's back in the portal. What's the latest you're hearing with him?
Very intricate situation with Tyler Barron right now, JD. So he's already taken visits to Miami and USC, and both are still alive. He's talked to Ole Miss a decent bit since re-entering the portal. And I've also heard a little bit about LSU in the last 48 hours. But the main reason why we're hearing about LSU at this moment is because his stepbrother, Wesley Walker, the safety who was previously at Tennessee and Louisville with him, is expected to go on a visit this weekend. We'll see how that all sorts out. And there is some conversation right now that Tyler Barron could visit LSU with Wesley Walker. But it's really intricate, and the reason why I say it's intricate is because he signed some paperwork, from our understanding, reporting on this with Steve Wilfong at Ole Miss, that will kind of force him to play at Ole Miss if he played at an SEC school. Now, Ole Miss could release him from that paperwork, but there's definitely going to be a process there if he decides to really go after that possibility at LSU. I really like where Miami's still at. They've been in this from the beginning. They got the first visit. I know I reported that LSU's definitely entered the picture, but by no means am I declaring them the leader or anything like that.
That's fascinating because he was playing at Tennessee last year and then now was at Ole Miss, and then he goes to Louisville. So the idea is if he goes to an SEC school, Ole Miss may have the rights, quote unquote, to Tyler Barron?
I don't know if that's the exact phrasing, but you're onto the right picture that, yes, I think he signed some sort of an agreement that would bind him to Ole Miss if he were to play in the SEC. And talked to someone in the SEC office yesterday on background that there is a possibility that the Ole Miss could release him. But at the same time, I don't know if he is all in on going down that rabbit hole per se.
That is wild. The day and age of college football that we're in right now, man, with contracts and paperwork and all of those things around NIL, I'm assuming that's fascinating. Now, you mentioned his teammate, and I believe he's related to Wesley Walker, if I'm not mistaken. His cousin, is that accurate? Wesley Walker?
No, they're stepbrothers.
Stepbrothers. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so family is what we got down to there. Are they a package deal? Because I saw Wesley Walker also taking a visit to Michigan. Is that accurate?
So it's been trying to report on this, obviously. So Wesley Walker was at Michigan this past weekend. Got that confirmed this morning. Tyler Barron was not with him. I don't want to call them a package deal because at the moment, if Tyler Barron went to Miami, I'm not very confident that Wesley Walker would also be there with him. But at the same time, I know when Tyler Barron went to USC, Wesley Walker also went out there with him. So it's kind of like a case-by-case basis at the moment.
Interesting. I mean, it's such an interesting place in college football that we're in right now because the portal's been closed, but now as the supply continues to decrease, you wonder if that demand starts to creep up for a number of these different players. A blast from the past of sorts that you and Steve Wiltfong reported on, Agiye Hall, former four-star from the class of 2021, he's headed to UCF after being at Bama and then at Texas, walking on with the Knights.
Yeah, kudos to this guy, man. He enrolled at UCF this past semester as a student with the hopes of being able to get on the team, and now he's going to be part of the team as a preferred walk-on from our understanding. And former four-star recruit, has a ton of talent, was at Alabama and Texas. And, I really like what UCF has done this offseason, man. And adding Agiye Hall obviously gives KJ Jefferson another option in the passing game, and that backfield's going to be really fun, too, with RJ Harvey and Penny Boone.
I was going to say, man, UCF, you look up at all the numbers that they've put up this spring, and you're like, man, UCF's kind of gone to work here with the guys that you just mentioned, Penny Boone, now Agiye Hall, and I know he's enrolled, but still, they got KJ Jefferson during that winter portal. Why is UCF a winner to this point? What are they doing that's being so well received by transfer portal recruits?
I think being in the state of Florida kind of, I don't know if it gives them an advantage, right? But being in Orlando definitely helps, I think. And I think Gus Malzahn is doing this really interesting thing where he's really using the portal to bring in experienced talent, right? Some programs like to use the portal as a feeder to maybe get a guy to start in a year. I think Gus Malzahn is really emphasizing the portal. I mean, he's got 2 quarterbacks now. He's gotten a wide receiver. He's gotten some running backs, and I really like what he's doing. It's I don't want to say it's unique, JD. I'm not sure about that, but I think that they're using it in a really effective way.
Yeah, man, the state of Florida has become a transfer portal destination from UCF, and then what Florida State's done throughout the course of the last 2 years, including this cycle. Miami is also one of your winners. Pete put out his transfer portal winners from this spring cycle over on on3.com, so go check that out. But Miami was on that list. What about Miami has worked this spring portal cycle?
I think that having Cam Ward make the decision to go from the NFL to Miami has really helped. And if you think about the timing of that decision, the portal had really winded down at that point. So Miami was not really able to take advantage of Cam Ward's decision to become a Hurricane. And now I think you're kind of seeing the fruits of that decision pay off. This spring, they add Sam Brown, the Houston wide receiver. And then they also had Damian Martinez, the all Pac-12 running back. And they've also done really good things on the defensive side of the ball with the Michigan State defensive lineman, Simeon Barrow. I think things are rolling right now. When I talked to Simeon Barrow the night before he actually committed to Miami, I was like, what is going on right now at Miami that makes you maybe want to be a part of that? He said, he's funny. He said, their heads are on straight, man. Like they're ready to win right now. So we'll see how it all goes in the fall, but there's definitely a lot of buy-in right now at Miami.
I'm glad you said that because that's kind of the way it feels to me from the outside looking in. Miami, over the course of the last couple of years, you look at them and you're like, yeah, they look like they're going somewhere, but I don't know if that's necessarily like a stable operation. But now going from year 2 to year 3 and the jump they took and the jump they're taking on this roster, like there's, I think, real cause for optimism from a fan base level and obviously from a roster standpoint, getting Simeon Barrow and others in the boat this past spring. One more team I want to talk to you about here, Pete, Colorado. They've gone to work in this spring transfer portal cycle. What do you make of what they've been able to gather from guys like Dallin Hayden and alike so far this spring?
Yeah, so they lose Dylan Edwards, who you and I think both agree was probably like the most impactful loss for them in the portal. And then they go in and get Ohio State running back Dallin Hayden, and then they also get Miami of Ohio running back Rashad Amos, who they actually flipped from Mississippi State. I think 2 of the more productive backs available in the portal. I really like what they've done on both sides of the ball when it comes to the line of scrimmage. They add the Ohio edge, Ray and Buell. They added a few other guys, including the Pitt edge. I believe you say his name, Dayon Hill. I think I maybe messed that one up off the top of my head. And then they also added a trio of linebackers who should be able to help out a defense that really struggled at times this past year.
You're an encyclopedia. Like, all those names you're just rattling off on the spot. I don't think I even told you I was going to ask about Colorado, and you're just like, just boom, got it off the top, got it right there on hand.
You got to bring it, man.
What did you say?
You got to bring it.
And you're bringing it, man. You're bringing it on, I think,
I'm
like
trying.
2.5 hours sleep. You're bringing it. Caffeine and raw energy, man. You're bringing it to the table. Pete, I got to ask you this, man, to kind of lead us out of this segment. There's a part of me that sees a team go to work in the portal in the spring, and I'm like, that's awesome. You're adding a ton of talent. On the other hand, I think the thought could be, well, hey, you're adding a lot of key pieces, or you're adding a lot of talent, period, after the most important part of your season, which is spring practice, to kind of get everyone on the same page schematically. What do you make of teams that are pushing really hard in the portal post-spring? Is that a good sign? Is that a bad sign? I mean, how do you interpret that?
I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign. Maybe one thing I haven't thought about enough that you kind of bring up, very interesting, right? For a program who brings in a bunch of guys in the spring, they have to mesh and gel very quickly and then try to get on the page in fall camp, when a lot of coaches would like all that to happen during the spring practice. So I guess I hadn't thought about that a lot. That's a really good point. I think the other thing, though, is just with the way the college football calendar is set up right now, coaches kind of have to attack the spring portal. You know what I mean? Like, this is the last time you're going to be able to add an offensive or defensive tackle or things like that. So I think it's more so the nature of the college football calendar, but it is a good point of how does it all mesh together, and then you got to roll everything out for week 1.
Yeah, it's tricky because it's like, if you're Miami, you're never going to turn down a Simeon Barrow Jr. if you can get him on the roster. But at the same time, You're like, man, in a perfect world, which we don't live in a perfect world, we'd love to have our roster nice and neat and tidy, have our answer on the defensive line, go through spring practice, we're good. But I suppose when you got the ability to add more talent, you take it whether you got spring practice or not. But Pete, appreciate you, man. What's next for you, man? Are we getting on vacation anytime soon, or are we just full steam ahead?
I'm looking forward to the On3 Elite event at the end of this month. And then we need to figure out what the future of college sports is going to look like, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, just 2 little things, just the recruiting event of the summer, and, oh, by the way, the future of college sports. No problem. Day in the life of Pete Nakos. Portal Pete, man, best in the business. Appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate it. Thanks, JD.
That's the man, Pete Nakos. So he texted us when we asked him to jump on the show yesterday. He's like, yes, happy to. I'm all in. Send him the link to jump in today. And he's like, I am heading back currently from a NBA playoff game. Drove back last night, probably, like I said, running on very, very minimal sleep. Portal Pete says, no problem. I got time. I got time to talk the portal with my people over there on the hard count. So he jumps on and brings it like nobody else in the business, and we appreciate him tremendously for it. Now, staying in the vein of the transfer portal, I want us to unpack together a little bit more in depth one of those picks from Pete Nakos and Steve Wiltfong. That was, of course, former Colorado corner Cormani McClain, heading from Colorado to TBD, but the pick is for the Florida Gators from both Steve Wiltfong and Pete Nakos. So from where I'm sitting, where there's smoke, there's fire. If that's the leader in the clubhouse, according to Pete Nakos, he'd be wildly surprised if there was any other school that got involved. If you're a Florida fan, you're a college football fan, period, this is a little bit of a head-scratcher. And we'll talk about why right now, but before we get to that, make sure you are subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. College football, transfer portal, whatever you love about this sport, I promise you, we talk about it and we do our best to embody it as a show every single day. We're live 3 times a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 11 a.m. Eastern. We are also full hour-long episodes on podcast. Apple, Spotify, you type in the hard count with JD Piquel, we will pop up for you. We'll have a good time, and we'll keep a good thing going. So with that plug out of the way, in some ways, seeing Cormani McClain picked to end up at Florida is a bit of a head-scratcher, because I think he did play it very close to the vest, and so it wouldn't be impossible for other big schools to have been in the mix here and it didn't come to light. But from the outside looking in, it's like USF is in the mix, some other G5 schools in the mix, hear about Memphis. And then this SEC school in Florida comes out of nowhere seemingly and ends up being the school to beat for him. And so on one hand, you're like, well, why is Florida the anomaly here to land Cormani McClain? Why are they the only big school that we can tell that's in the mix? And the other part of this is if you're Florida, it feels like they're trying to get their feet underneath them from a culture standpoint. Like they have had some years that they, quite frankly, don't believe are up to their standard. Some of that you could look at the locker room and say, well, if we want to be better overall, it doesn't make sense for us to add someone to this locker room that doesn't necessarily have a winning pedigree to his name. And I'm not talking about him coming from Colorado. I'm talking about the way that Deion Sanders talked about him at Colorado. Because Deion Sanders was asked during the year last year, hey, how do what does Cormani McClain have to do to get on the field? Because he wasn't playing. He was a 5-star recruit. He was one of these massive acquisitions for Deion Sanders from that previous class. And Deion Sanders basically, to put it simply, is like he's got to show up on time. He's got to handle his business. Essentially implying for us that Cormani McClain maybe has some maturing and growing up to do. And so, again, if you're a Florida fan, you're like, yeah, guy's talented, but do we really want to add that to our team as we're trying to fight and scratch and claw to get this team back to where we expect it to be? Is that really helping us achieve our overall goal? This, to me, the first thought I had, the first reminder, the first feeling I had, it reminded me a lot of Agiye Hall when he transferred from Alabama to Texas. Now, I'm not saying every single circumstance is the same here, but Agiye Hall transferred from Alabama to Texas. The feeling was, yes, really good player. There's a little bit of risk involved when you bring him onto your football team for what he means to you culturally and what he means to the locker room and all those things. Now, outside looking in, Agiye Hall wasn't a fit at Texas, ended up transferring out. He's now walking on at UCF, and shouts to Agiye Hall, super talented. Hope he ends up having a tremendous career at UCF. But ultimately, it's fair to say that he wasn't a fit at Texas, and the locker room, the culture, was strong enough to withstand him not being a fit. And so Billy Napier's saying, hey, I think we may be able to get Cormani McClain if it ends up happening that way. In some ways, to me, this is Billy Napier betting on his building and betting on his locker room, betting on his culture. Because is he talented? Can he help us if we're Billy Napier? Yes. So the worry is, okay, well, does he bring some guys down with him if he doesn't do what he's supposed to do? Does his attitude and does his immaturity or potential immaturity end up hurting us as a locker room? Billy Napier is saying, I don't think so. Billy Napier is saying, I think what we have is strong enough to where we can bring in someone talented, bring them along, help them, and we can go forward from there. It's also worth noting that maybe Cormani McClain, his experience at Colorado, period, he's learned and he's matured and he's gone forward from there as well. He also did come on at the end of last year for Colorado and play in some games and sounded like he started doing things in the right way. The reason why I don't think this is crazy, if you're a Florida fan, Florida had a lot wrong last year. All right? You don't go 5-7 with having a lot of things right. But one of the things that I don't think was wrong at Florida a season ago was culture. The reason why I say that, you can spot culture most visibly in a losing streak. Like you're 10-0, you're 13-0, you're going to the college football playoff. You could have some guys that aren't tremendous culture guys, but you would never be able to tell that because vibes are high, winning cures everything. When you're losing the way that Florida did last year, losing their last 5 in a row, you see guys throwing the towel, and you start to see those blowouts pile up, and you see bad losses pile up. And I'm not calling any of those losses good losses for Florida, but there was 0 games that I saw where Florida was like, forget this, man. Forget Florida football. Forget Billy Napier. They battled all the way through. The Missouri game, horrific loss. Horrific loss. Everybody and their mama in Gainesville probably has a feeling of nausea when they think about that game. 4th and 17, you let up a first down. As the team in Missouri that won the Cotton Bowl last year. Florida took them to the wire after they had lost multiple games in a row. The Arkansas game, it was an overtime heartbreaker. Pushed them to the limit. Florida State. Yeah, I know Florida State didn't have their starting quarterback in that game. It was a rivalry game, so there's a reason to get up for it. But that was a game now where Florida's like lost a few in a row now. If they didn't have a strong culture or have some culture to begin with, they would have thrown in the towel. That would have been it. They would have said, whatever, we're done with this. Push Florida. Or push Florida State, rather. So I'm not trying to give any excuses for losses, but I am saying the culture, to me, doesn't seem to be the glaring issue. And so going back to what I said about Cormani McClain, if he ends up at Florida, seems like they have a culture in place, or Billy Napier feels like they have a culture in place to be able to support him, bring him along, and allow him to have success. So I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm not saying Cormani McClain shows up there, starts day one, ends up being a baller for them in the SEC. It could happen. Definitely could happen. But I'm saying I think the approach, if you're a Florida fan, is if this works for us, great. If it works, awesome. But if not, it's not going to bring anybody down with us because we have a strong enough culture, a strong enough locker room to withstand any potential issues that adding someone to our locker room that isn't about what we're about could have. And that's kind of been my, not to get too far down a rabbit hole here, that's kind of been my thought around Clemson for a long time here. Dabo Swinney seems to be really protective of his culture. We don't want anybody that's not going to be about what we're about into this building. You know, we want to protect it. But, like, if your culture is as strong as you think it is, and Billy Napier clearly thinks it's strong, then you can add a couple players that necessarily don't do the things the way that you do them. You can bring them on, bring them up to speed, acclimate them, and you're not risking your culture to do that. So does Cormani McClain end up at Florida? I trust Pete Nakos and I trust Steve Wiltfong. We'll keep an eye on this. We'll have thoughts for you as soon as that becomes a reality, if it does. But I don't think that necessarily this is a massive risk for the locker room or massive risk for the culture, any of those things. If Cormani McClain ends up at Florida, Billy Napier is betting on his locker room, betting on his way of doing things, and betting on the foundation that he's built, that his team can bring him along, and at the very worst, they can withstand bringing someone in that maybe doesn't do things the way they want him to do them. So we'll see what happens there. But Cormani McClain has been predicted to end up at Florida from Steve Wiltfong and Pete Nakos. All right, let's keep a good thing going here, as I say. We're going to get to your live questions here in just a matter of moments. Got some thoughts on the EA Sports cover in a few minutes here. Before we get to that, though, I want us to address together some slander that's been going on since the college football season ended. There's a lot of thought and a lot of talk that is negative in nature around South Carolina Gamecocks head football coach Shane Beamer. And it sounds like this. Hey, 5-7 last year. He's on the hot seat. Hey, he's got to win this year. Other people go a little bit more personal, and they say he's a gimmick. He whines to the refs. He's corny. He's quirky, all those things. They can't really compete in the SEC with him as the head coach. All those things are said based on this last year. And I want us to kind of acknowledge what happened last year, say that's not okay. It's not what we expect at South Carolina based on what you did the 2 years previous. But I don't think we should also be victims of the moment. Because this time last year, remember how we were talking about South Carolina? Remember how the college football public, the same people that are slandering Shane Beamer, would talk about him last year, coming off of back-to-back top 10 wins to end the season over Tennessee and over Clemson? People saying, wait, South Carolina, are they a sleeper team to end up in the SEC championship? I'm just saying, could they push some teams maybe and find their way to Atlanta? Or there was a lot made around South Carolina that was pretty lofty based on how they finished the season last year. And then you have a bad year in 2023 and everyone's off the bandwagon and they're talking about Shane Beamer being fired. I think you can provide context to a situation without making excuses. And the context to me is they were bad/injured on the offensive line a lot of last year. Like, y'all, we saw them in person against Tennessee. It was bad. They cannot stop anybody up front. So it doesn't matter who you have at quarterback. It doesn't matter who you have at running back. It doesn't matter if you have a first-round wide receiver to Xavier Legette. It's hard to get them the football when you have like 1.5 Mississippis throw the football, when you have no concern about a team running the football consistently against you. Also, Juice Wells was a massive part of those upsets last year against Tennessee and against Clemson in 2022, rather. Didn't really have him healthy the entirety of the season. Using context, again, you play in the SEC. This is hard. This is hard stuff coaching college football, period. But in the SEC, like, it is the monsoon of college football conferences. What I mean by that is it's hard to sail your boat through that thing if you got a few holes in it. And South Carolina, roster-wise, offensive line-wise especially, had a few holes on it. The defense wasn't great either. So my frustration and my pushback on all this hot seat talk is the past 2 years, Shane Beamer, before this season, had overachieved. Like, Vegas put out some numbers. I think he blew them out of the water both years, 7-6 and 8-5. And then you have one bad year after you develop some expectations, and people are like, he's not the right guy. Give up on him. And I think my question to that would be, well, what were you expecting? What were you expecting? Because I think your expectations have a direct correlation to your happiness when you subtract reality from it, or you add reality to it, rather. And I think the answer to what were you expecting, some folks would say some version of, well, what Tennessee did. We want to accomplish what Tennessee did last year. Like, okay, well, Josh Heupel's been a head coach now for 6 years. Shane Beamer just finished up year 3. Maybe what he is as a head coach today is going to be different than what he is as a head coach 3 years from now. Also, it's worth noting, if you want to capture that Tennessee magic, why was Tennessee so successful in 2022? Yes, they had, good weapons offensively. What they had in 2022, though, for my money, was Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt. So if you hit at the quarterback position, that's where the magic starts. That's where you can really change the complexion of your season. And the folks in Columbia, they probably want me to speak quietly right now, but they got a guy in Lenora Sellers who they feel really excited about, has a ton of physical tools. He was named the starter not that long ago. I believe it was in the last week and a half ago. If Lenora Sellers hits how they think he could hit, maybe this discussion sounds different this time next year around South Carolina and the magic that they were able to bottle up. But I'm just trying to say here, don't compare your situation apples to apples to what Tennessee was or to what Kentucky is now. Like, those things have been built over the course of a little bit longer period of time. And the Josh Heupel thing, like I said, I really think that's a direct correlation to how they've recruited the quarterback position. I think the way that you build at South Carolina, the way you win at South Carolina, is by using the portal to kind of accent your roster and fill gaps, and then be able to recruit at the high school level over a sustained period of time. Last 2 classes for Shane Beamer, top 20. Right now in 2024, top 10 portal class. I think he's doing the right things. I think they're doing the right things in-house to South Carolina to get to ultimately where they want to go. But the biggest thing for me with Shane Beamer, and all the hot seat talk and the way that he's viewed from a personal level, I think it's all about the win-loss goggles. And this is a tale as old as time in college football. This is something we've talked about a lot on this show. How you view your head coach is specifically viewed through, are they winning or are they losing? A great example of this is Dabo Swinney. If they're winning, Dabo's doing it his way. It's his culture. If they're losing, he's lame. He's outdated. He's too corny. Same thing with Shane Beamer. People say the same thing about Shane Beamer right now. When they were winning, he's throwing on the backwards hat and the sunglasses and vibing out with his guys in the locker room. He's a player's coach. He's cool. He's emotional. Wears his heart on his sleeve. And if they're losing, he's corny. He's yelling at the refs and they're losing. He's whiny. He's yelling at the refs and they're winning. He's passionate. You know who yells at refs in college football? Literally every single coach in the sport. Okay, so the win-loss goggles around Shane Beamer, I understand the thought behind it. It's a reality. It's what we deal with in college football. But let's not pretend that Shane Beamer hasn't done a good job at South Carolina to this point. To say he's on the hot seat going into this season, I think that is a wild mistake if South Carolina does make a move in another direction at the head coach position. And I think Shane Beamer is building something at South Carolina. Understand now, growth, when you build something, it's not linear. It's going to have a couple dips. It's going to have a couple of turns that you don't want it to take, but you give it enough time. I really do believe that South Carolina and Shane Beamer are heading in the right direction. Last thing I'll say, who else are you going to go get? You want to go get a coordinator? Tell me that's not going to hit the reset button for a year or two. We saw what the portal does when you hire a new head coach. I have to believe that Shane Beamer, at the very least, has a ton of buy-in from his roster. Who's going to do a better job than Shane Beamer with what they've done right now? It's a building process. You hire somebody new, whether it be a head coach from the G5 level or a coordinator or whatever, you hit the reset button, I believe, on your roster. I think you hit the reset button on the growth that you've already got in-house at South Carolina. They landed a 5-star in each of the last 2 classes, y'all. Like, he's doing something there. Give him some time. He can attract talent. And I think over the course of the next couple of years, if given the opportunity, South Carolina will be in that conversation for one of the top teams in the SEC. If he has the time now, if he has the runway to build his roster how he wants to. I believe in Shane Beamer. I believe in what he's doing there. And I think the hot seat talk, quite frankly, just ridiculous. Notice I did not say the top team. I'm not saying South Carolina is going to be Georgia. You give South Carolina some time. I trust what Shane Beamer is building there, and I think he's shown enough over the course of the last couple of years to give them a little bit more faith in what he's doing. All right, so get in your questions to the live chat. We got one more segment to get to here, but I want to hear from y'all. Hey, also make sure you like the video. We got a good number of people watching right now. If everyone liked the video, we'd be well over our goal of 100 likes. So a little thumbs up icon under the picture. Go ahead and like that. Totally free. You won't be added to an email list. It just helps us boost the show and boost the algorithm. So thank you in advance for getting that done. All right, the Deluxe Edition of College Football 25, the cover for that deluxe edition, rather, has dropped. Fired all of us up. It was a beautiful thing. It was kind of like whenever you saw that cover, it felt a lot like, to me, whenever you see an old friend. They're familiar in a way. They look a little bit different. Haven't seen them in a long time. But you already know that y'all are going to pick up exactly where you left off 10 or so years ago. And I like the fact now in this deluxe edition cover, they had multiple players included into it. You had Donovan Edwards in the middle there. You had Travis Hunter. You got Quinn Ewers. Also, if you look closely, you see Jalen Milroe, you see Carson Beck, you see Quinshon Judkins. In terms of those main three players, you can see, I'll just say this: I love the way they put this deluxe edition cover together. And to be fair, I believe by our Thursday show we should have some more news on the game, so we'll talk about it in real time then. So tune in. The fact you had the back of these players facing you, so you just see the name tags or the nameplates rather. They're walking towards the field. Had very much so like we're back kind of vibes. But in terms of the players they chose specifically for this deluxe edition cover, I love it. Donovan Edwards, Michigan's the defending national champ. Michigan is also a run-first football team, so you got their running back on there. Michigan also has won the Big Ten the last 3 years. I think having him on the cover is exactly the way to go about it. Quinn Ewers on there, massive brand that is Texas, massive personal brand for Quinn Ewers. I think that was a layup. Travis Hunter, arguably the most visible college football player, period, with what he's doing under Deion Sanders there. And Colorado, regardless of how you feel about them, they're going to be a story in college football this upcoming season anyway. I like they had Quinshon Judkins on here because he transferred from Ole Miss to Ohio State, kind of sneaky, putting him on there somewhere. There's a feeling maybe that it wasn't going to have a transfer guy on the cover. I like that they did because transfer portal is one of the biggest evolutions of college football since this game was out. So sneaking him on there, I really like that. And then Jalen Milroe also being on there. You can write a thesis paper on what you think Alabama is going to be this year, and it would draw eyeballs just because Alabama is going to be a story with the departure of Nick Saban. Also, Jalen Milroe is going to be a really good player in 2024, so we'll leave that there. I just love that we're back. No analysis. I just love that we're back. Because for a long time now, I haven't had this. And for college football fans that grew up playing this game and that remember everything that this game was to them, it's not just a game, and I don't want to get sentimental here, but it's not just a game for us. This was how we bridged the gap from the end of college football season all the way through week one. Because remember now, there wasn't always this national coverage around the transfer portal and around NIL, and there wasn't always this movement from team to team, and recruiting coverage has picked up drastically over the course of the last 10 to 15 years, I would say. This used to be how you would get your college football fix year-round. You go on a run dynasty mode, and you play with Eastern Michigan, you take them all the way to the national championship, build them to a national power. Like, we're back, all right? We're back. A lot's changed. A lot of things have moved, and a lot of things have shifted across the college football landscape, and they will continue to shift and move. But the feeling of familiarity and the feeling of seeing an old friend, seeing this cover again, just feels good. A win for college football, a win for the college football public, for all of us alike. And I cannot wait till we get some more news on this thing. So there's a countdown on easports.com, I think it is, or some EA Sports website that says in 2-ish days, time of us being live right now, right around 11 a.m. Central on Tuesday, we're going to get some news. So I think around 11 a.m. Eastern time, so 10 a.m. Central time on Thursday, we should have some news, which, as fate would have it, is exactly when we are live on the air. So make sure you're tuned in. We'll talk about it together. But the deluxe cover, I think they nailed it. From the vibe to the players to everything in between. Just feels good to be back. Just feels good to be back. Glad to have you all a part of this, man. Y'all are what makes this show go, and y'all are what makes this show what it is. So we got a meeting here in just a matter of minutes. But before we get to that, though, I want to get to y'all's questions before we jump off the air. So let's bring in the man, the myth, the legend that makes this show go, Nick Heavy Lifter Break. Nick, what's going on, brother? How we doing?
I'm doing good, man. So from what I can tell from OG Gary, College Game Day's headed to Notre Dame and Texas A&M.
Yeah.
That's at College Station, right?
That is in College Station.
In College Station.
That's going to be huge. That's going to be a good one, man. I thought about adding that to the show because we're getting more and more game times. I don't think the game time for that is out just yet. But tomorrow we'll talk some of the game times that have been released. Colorado, Nebraska in Lincoln as a night game. Big noon has got Wisconsin and Alabama. That'll be a good one. But Yeah, the fact that we're getting that kind of announcement feels like we're getting closer and closer to college football season. It's like the light at the end of the tunnel. You know it's there. Getting to peek at it just feels good. So we got to hang in there. Got to finish through the line here as we keep moving forward throughout the spring season.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. That's a good way to get started. Would you have gone anywhere else? Like, would you have decided to have?
No, that's perfect.
That's it? Okay.
That's perfect, man. You nailed that. Golly.
Okay, sounds good. Willie Thomas says, who's got a better record this year, UF or UCF?
Whoa. That's tricky. So here's the thing. UCF may very well have the better record. Florida could go 8-4 and be a top 25 team in the country. Florida could go 7-5 and be a top 30 team in the country. Like, their schedule is ridiculous. I don't feel like it's inappropriate to say UCF will have the better record if we're betting right now. But if Florida goes 9-3, they could be in the conversation for a playoff spot. Like, that's sounds crazy as we sit here right now in May, but we're going to do a segment tomorrow on 9-3 teams that could make the playoff. Florida would be in that discussion without a doubt. Feels like a steep climb right now, but that could be a possibility for the Gators.
Yeah, I'm looking at both of their schedules. I'd say Florida's got a tougher time this year. But
yeah, no doubt.
They do play one another, so
that'll be a good one, man. In the swamp.
In the swamp. Okay. Man, JD, here's another one. Okay, The Truth, who, by the way, says either sprained or broke their toe playing softball this weekend.
Oh, man.
So shout out to The Truth.
There we go.
Says, you're starting a new college football program. Who's your head coach? Who's your offensive coordinator? And who's your DC?
That is a really good question. That's a really good question. And so I'm torn right now because the obvious answer is Kirby Smart to be my head coach, right? Like, if we bring in Kirby Smart, we're going to win national championships. I'm going to assume that I can't just hire Kirby Smart and I got to go somewhere else. I would hire Dan Lanning. I think he is exactly in the mold of what's going to win in college football. Energetic, young, prioritizes recruiting, is going to prioritize the defensive side of the football, going to prioritize line of scrimmage. And then from an OC and DC perspective, offensive coordinator, you know what? I will go out and hire a lot of the OCs that I would have hired are actually already head coaches. OC, I will hire – let's hire Zach Kitley. I'm hire Zach Kitley from Texas Tech. He's going to be a head coach here sooner rather than later. Wide open offense. We're going to throw it around the yard. We're going to be a fun product to watch on TV. And then defensive coordinator – I'll go with Blake Baker. We're going to be, if nothing else, we're going to be exciting to watch on TV. We're going to blitz a lot. We're going to apply pressure. We're going to build the roster the right way with Dan Lanning as our head coach. So that's the way that I'll lean right now. Again, that's assuming I can't hire Kirby Smart to be my head coach.
Yeah, I mean, what kind of influence do we have in this program, or can we get anyone? Yeah,
I think we could probably get anyone. I think we're probably – our administration's got our back here, I think. So we're probably swinging a corked bat, and we'll go hire who we want to hire,
Let's do it. Hey, one more?
Make an offer they can't refuse. One more sounds great, brother.
Okay. Jared Stidham. JD, what player will be the best pickup from the portal either cycle here in the offseason?
Ooh. It's tough for me to not say Cam Ward because I think he legitimately changes you if you're Miami from like a 7-8 win football team to maybe a 10-win football team if you're able to put the pieces around him effectively. So I'll say Cam Ward was one of the biggest. Caleb Downs was also a massive get for Ohio State. Now, Ohio State didn't necessarily need to have Caleb Downs in that defense because of how good they were already going to be, but I think Caleb Downs is a massively impactful piece for them and could be one of those guys that helps get them over the hump to getting back to competing for national championships and winning the Big Ten. So those are the two that I would say are the most impactful. Sneaky, I might go with C.J. Daniels from LSU. We talked about him a little bit during the live show. He's a 1,000-yard receiver from Liberty. Like, he is going to be, I believe, a go-to guy for LSU alongside Kyron Lacey. I think they have big plans for him. I think he'll thrive in that offense. So I'll go with those guys as kind of the big names and also the sneaky gets for the portal. Also, I'm going to say one more here. Walter Nolan, for what Ole Miss needed, some more big boys up front to kind of have more of a presence in the trenches in the SEC. I think that was a home run get for Lane Kiffin, one of the top big boys in the portal, one of the top guys in the portal, period.
Yep. Well done.
Good stuff. Well, Nick, I appreciate you, man. This was fun. So I was out on Friday. I was at my brother's graduation. You have anything throughout the weekend that was noteworthy? You go see any movies? Anything?
I visited my parents this weekend.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So I was out. No movies. I haven't seen a movie since like last Wednesday, so it's been a while.
Golly.
In case anyone doesn't know, I love movies. If you ever have a question about movies in a live chat, I will answer it in the comments. I'm always ready to talk about that.
Hey, I saw Fall Guy this weekend. Really good.
I liked Fall Guy as well.
Fall Guy was tremendous. I wasn't sure what to expect going into it, like Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, but I thought it was great, dude.
I thought they carried the movie like by far. Like the story wasn't outstanding, but they're just so charming. Yeah.
They threw it on the back and made it happen.
Yeah, they did.
Heck yeah.
Yep.
Nick Brake, you're the man. I appreciate you, brother.
Yep. See you tomorrow, guys.
See you same time tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. Like I already mentioned, talking game times that we are going to get for the 2024 seasons. Those are starting to slowly but surely leak out to us. We'll give you our thoughts on that. Also, at 9-3, who can make the college football playoff? 2 losses used to be the kiss of death, and now if you lose 3 games, do you have a chance to get in? I think a couple of teams do. We'll unpack it together tomorrow. We appreciate y'all so much making this show what it is. Y'all are tremendous. Y'all are phenomenal, and we love you very, very much. Tune in tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. Subscribe to the show on your way out. Totally free. Helps us help you. Subscribe to the podcast, Spotify and Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. The Hard Count with J.D. Piquel. We will keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.